chair. Just one moment.
Yeah, just got to get tape rolling or whatever, however you want to call it.
Through the chair, we are live.
Okay, good morning. We'll get started with this morning's agenda. The first thing on the agenda is unfinished business. And it's application A 2021-93. The only one registered is the applicant, which is Andre. And we had asked you to go back and reconsider some options for the front entrance on the elevation. And I think that had come specifically from my colleague Scott, if I remember correctly. So that in mind, I'll probably hand this over to Scott. Do you have any questions or comments, Scott?
No, I'm fine, actually. And just for Mr. Bateman's benefit, I didn't realize that the French doors were French doors. I thought they were windows. So both options are going to require an entry from the street. On a personal note, I prefer option 2, but if nobody has any comments, I'm certainly proposed to support the recommendation and leave it up to staff to figure out with the applicant what's best.
The only comment that I had is, and because I see this in another application that we're going to be looking at this morning, is you may want to specifically specify that if they go with option 2, that it should be inset from the front facade. Because I think that was the intent, if I'm looking at this correctly. And it says recessed entryway, and I'm assuming that recessed means inset from the front facade. So maybe for clarification purposes, it might not be a bad idea to clarify that. And then I don't know if there's one that you want to specifically specify, 1 or 2, or I agree with my colleague Scott. I prefer myself also 2 more so than 1. I think it's less obtrusive from the streetscape. That's my feeling there. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Scott?
Just a question then from staff. Mr. Bateman, do you feel that we need to impose a condition as suggested by the chair?
Through the chair, I do.
Okay.
It just would clarify a little bit more, right, Brian?
I agree, Mr. Chair.
Do you have specific wording, Mr. Bateman?
You're looking for me for this one. That the, well, for the record, I'll say through the chair, through the record, staff had gone with option 1. However, the committee has a final say. So if it is option 2, that's fine. I obviously support that. So that the applicant receive approval of a drawing to show an inset door, option 2, or sorry, option 2, to the satisfaction of the director of planning, or something along that lines. How's that?
Scott?
Can we hear from the applicant then what he would prefer?
Andre?
Hi, can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, yep.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I just want to clarify what is option 1 and option 2 so that I know which one you're talking about.
Option 1 is the one with, I believe it's French doors. And option 2 is the one with the recessed entry, single door, window beside it.
Yeah, so we, I just, basically I was going with the French doors because the recessed door is not working for the living space. So are you saying you're okay with the French door option?
We haven't said one way or the other, actually.
Okay.
That's why
Okay.
Mr. Hanna had put the question forward to you. That's why.
So I just want to speak up over here and say that my suggestion would be the French doors. It's the much more expensive option for me because we were going to put a door and a window, which I could have done for less than 1,500. So just to keep the front face of the building looking nice, like you suggested, we've picked the French door option because it fits right into the garage door space. But the recessed door option was ruining the floor plan for the garage.
Scott, do you have anything?
Well, I'd prefer then to hear from the rest of the committee what they think.
Yeah, Mike?
I am quite comfortable with option number one if, in fact, the example photograph that's been provided is used in the construction, and is that French door on grade?
Yes, I'm just going to show you what I have over here. Just wondering if if you can see, look at my camera. This was the option one with the French door.
Yeah, that's the photograph that is included with our notes.
Yes, so that's. I mean, this is what would be ideal for me, and we've tried to satisfy, what some of the requirements were the last time.
Right. Anyone else, Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to see that this has been resolved with two options. I think both of them are pretty good, but seeing as the applicant would want the French door option, I will support that.
All right.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Mr. Chair, just to round it out, I will support it as well, if that's the preference of staff and the applicant. And I can appreciate the want to maximize internal living space. So
Yep.
And to address member Kidd's concern, perhaps we can have a condition that requires construction substantially in accordance with the option one elevation. I don't know if this is to scale, but perhaps just sort of generally in accordance with.
Right.
Condition.
Yep, that sounds good. Yeah, I think it's a good idea to nail it one way or the other to nail it down anyways, opposed to leaving it up in the air. So is that a motion then, Jennifer?
It can be. I saw Mr. I'm not sure if you saw Mr. Chair.
Scott threw it back onto the floor, so.
I'm prepared to make that a motion. Absolutely.
All right. Second, Bob? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right. Next application is for new business. It's A 2021-105. I'm sorry, I got the names mixed up. That's Andre in this case. And staff's recommending approval with conditions. Does anyone have, there's no one registered in opposition. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Scott?
Just had a quick question for staff. It looks like the removal of the gravel and kind of changing it over to landscaping is critical to this support by staff. And I noticed it's going to be site plan approval required. Should we impose a condition, or will SPA take care of that?
Through the chair, it's our opinion, Mr. Hanna, that the site plan will take care of that matter.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Motion? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair. This seems fairly straightforward. It would be permitted under the new bylaw anyway. So I move that this application be approved with the two conditions in the staff report.
All right, second. Mike, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Thanks, George. Okay, next application. is A 2021-106. That's 37 Highland Road West. There's no one in opposition. The only person registered is the applicant to speak, which is Matthew. The one question that I have for staff is I noted that fire, and I'm not really sure what they meant by this, but fire had asked for, I'm not sure if it was a condition or what they want. In any event, there was a comment that they wanted hard surface from the street to the entrance of the rear unit. So I don't know if we should consider that as a condition or not, but it was for, as it dealt with fire safety for the back units. So.
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah.
can answer that question.
Sure.
The applicant would be required to have a site plan approved by staff. That'll be one of the things that will be addressed in that process.
Okay.
And in
Scott?
fact, that's underway.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had another question for staff. Generally, I like the concept, so I just want to ensure that the applicant doesn't get caught at permit with another variance. I'm having a hard time reading the plans, but when I read the site plan, it says zoning requirements, it can't exceed 80 square meters, and it looks like, you know, on my plan anyway, it says the building will be 87.5. Am I reading that incorrectly?
Through the chair, yes, it's actually 67.5.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Jennifer?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Bateman. Is site plan, and I was going to look up this up in the site plan bylaw, but can you confirm whether secondary dwelling units are required to go through site plan?
We have, sorry, through the chair, we do have a process for that requires site plan for accessory dwelling units. Yeah.
And that's required through the site plan control bylaw?
I'd have to get back to you on that for sure. Oh,
Okay.
I see Richard's just chimed in. He's our expert on this. Richard Kelly Roots. Thanks, Rich. I'm glad you're there.
Thanks, Brian. Through the chair, the approval process for additional detached dwelling units like this is stamp plan B. So it's one of our scope site plans, and that is through the site plan control bylaw. And I can also confirm that this application is already submitted for site plan, and they're just working their way through the process, including the minor variance application.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And just to follow up on that, will the fire department be circulated, or have they been circulated on that site plan process application?
Through the chair, yes, and they have commented. They've already been circulated on the application, and I believe that that's what their comment relates to, which the chair brought up about the hardscaping. So the bylaw requires a 1.1 meter walkway from the rear of the unit to the sidewalk, and that will be provided through the site plan.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I like this project and will be supporting it. Thank you.
Scott?
Yeah, I just thought of another question, Mr. Chair, that I had that I wanted to ask staff. Just for future reference in this one as well, will this particular unit be separately serviced, or will it be connected through the existing house?
Through the chair. Do you know, Rich? I'll defer that to you if you know.
Yes, sure, I can take it, Brian. Through the chair. So our engineering team only allows one set of service connection to the street, so they will be required to tap into the services from the main house.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Motion? Jennifer?
Yes, Mr. Chair, motion to approve as per the staff recommendation.
All right, second. Scott, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next application is A 2021-107. That's 2628 Ellen Street West. No one in opposition. Two parties in support. Scott, you're online. There you go. Hi, Scott. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments? Scott?
Nobody has any comments. I just wanted to commend the applicant and the agent. I used to be involved in Heritage in another municipality. I think this has been very sensitively done as far as the plans go, and I fully support, and I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right, anyone else? Mike?
Just echoing in entirety the comments of Mr. Hannah, and again, fully support the application.
All right,
And the motion on the floor, and I would second that motion if that's where we are.
all in favor? Carried, thank you. That's good. It's a very sensitive heritage neighborhood. Right, next application is A 2021-108. No one in opposition. Applicant here is in support. It's 102 Fenwick Court. And this just before we move forward, I saw that, and this question to staff, I saw that there is a condition in here regarding trees. And I didn't see a condition from the Heritage regarding any trees. And from what I could tell on the aerial, I don't see any trees. Is this an error, or is this something that should this be removed?
Chair, it should be removed. It was an error.
Okay,
My
thanks.
apologies for that.
But no problem, keeping us on our toes. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your observation there. I was going to make the same comment. I just had a quick question for the applicant about the privacy screen that they're proposing to build and how high they expect that privacy screen to be on the side yard.
Hi, I believe it's set to be 8 feet. It is in the drawing that we submitted with the application, and the company doing the deck will make sure that we meet whatever the need is.
Mhm.
That's terrific, Mr. Chairman. That was my only concern. Make sure there was a screen up there, and it sounds like it's going to be substantial.
Okay, good. Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to confirm there's no one here in opposition.
No, there isn't. No one's registered.
All right. Question for the applicant, through you, Mr. Chair. I know that need is not part of the test for approving a minor variance, but I'm just curious as to why this wasn't simply reconfigured to be narrower and longer into your backyard so as to obviate the variance.
There is a patio door that's less than 1.2 meters from the edge of our home because our side yard is 0 until we get into the backyard. So previous owners set up the deck and the patio door that way. So that's why.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Helpful. I have no further questions.
All right. Scott?
If there are no other comments from the committee, I'm prepared to support the staff recommendation subject to condition number 1 only.
Okay, second. Bob, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, next application is A 2021-109. 2 people registered in support, no one in opposition. Good morning, Pierre. How are you?
Good, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Good. Any questions or comments for the
No.
applicant? Anyone? Scott?
I'm waiting for comments, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I like this application. I think mixed use is the way to go downtown, and I was moved by the fact that if this were 50 meters to the northwest, there would be no parking required. There is on-street parking on King Street, and I think it's a very good application. So I
Yeah.
fully support the staff recommendation.
I agree. Okay, that's a motion?
That would be a motion, sir.
Okay, second, Bob, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next application is A 2021 110, and that's 125 Seabrook Drive. No one's registered in opposition. We have just the applicant. And is there any questions or comments or a motion? Scott?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment for the applicant. Nowhere in the report does it actually specify what the use is going to be. I'm just curious as to the use.
That's a question for the applicant?
Yes,
Rupa?
yes, please.
Hi there. Sorry, can you repeat that? I missed it while it was connecting.
I just am curious as to the actual use. It's specified as a educational establishment or sometimes as a commercial school. I'm just curious as to what the actual use will be.
This is a after-school tutoring type program. So majority of the time I will be using it as an office type space where I'm preparing work for the students. Usually what happens is in the evenings, the students will come in for quick sessions where I assess their knowledge and skills, and they get their work graded, and I give them new work to take home. And I also get an opportunity to assess their skills while they're there. So it's a quick in and out for the kids.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anyone else? Jennifer?
Yes, I think somewhat picking up on Mr. Hannah's comments. So I believe educational establishment is a defined term in the zoning bylaw. And perhaps Mr. Bateman can confirm that. But I believe that as commercial school is as well. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're permitting so that there isn't any confusion going forward.
This is the challenge when you're working remotely, right? Just have to get the bylaw here.
Yeah.
Just bear with me.
Brian, if it helps, there's no commercial school in your current bylaw, but there would be in the future one.
Right, you're right, Scott.
So I think it would be allowed under the new bylaw, but not under the 85-1. That's the reason.
That is correct. That is true.
Okay, is educational establishment a defined term under the new bylaw? It is a defined term under the old bylaw. So I just want to make sure we are not confused going forward as to what's being permitted, and if it's extended to commercial school, is that going to be permitted on this site as of right under the new bylaw? Okay. And my concerns are less, but I still see that there's two different permissions being given here. So I just I'm not sure if we should be limiting it to educational establishment or commercial school. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, I'm having challenges connecting remotely to the bylaw right now. I don't know if one of our other planners who are online right now can check as well. We'll ask them to, that way we can kill two birds with one stone, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Again, Brian, if I can help, educational establishment is a defined term, but there is no commercial school in the current bylaw. Under the future bylaw, both will be defined, and it would be, I think, considered a commercial school.
Okay. So maybe we should change it to commercial school then, in recognition of the new bylaw that's coming out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if that's going to be a permitted use as of right on the site under the new bylaw, I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Okay, so then,
Thanks, Scott.
thank you, everyone. So Jennifer, you're making it an amendment to the recommendation to commercial school and strike educational establishment.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you want to also change that in the recital above? So there's clearly no ambiguity.
Yes, sir. I think so. Commercial school, strike educational establishment in both places.
Yeah,
Remove the brackets in the, in the recital, and then in the condition 1, change educational establishment to commercial use.
yeah,
Commercial school, excuse me.
yeah. Okay. Does anyone have anything else? Otherwise, I take that as a motion from Jennifer. Scott?
Fully support and second that motion.
All right, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next applications, 52 Anvil Street, that's 0A 2021-111. We only have one person registered, and that is in support, the applicant. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Or a motion? Bob?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a fairly straightforward application. The conditions, again, are very straightforward. So I move that this be approved with the 3 conditions as in the staff report.
All right, second. Mike, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next application is A 2021-112, that's 135 Wellington. No one's registered in opposition. Just the applicant, Paul, who's in support, obviously. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Paul? Is Paul online? Yeah. Great. Any questions or comments or a motion? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is very straightforward. The variance is from 1.2 parking spaces per unit versus 1.25. I think this is the definition of a minor variance. So I move that this be approved with the 3 conditions that are in the staff report.
All right, second. Jennifer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, next application is A 2021-113. No one's registered in opposition. This person's registered in support. Just the comment that I have before I turn this over, when I read through this, staff's report didn't describe the use or the intended use outside of just a craftsman shop. And I wonder if we should maybe be more specific to this use, and it would probably benefit the applicant as well anyways. Whereas if we look in numbers, I'm just throwing this out there, that item number C, it says the variance is specific for the proposed craftsman shop being an Esta Chocolates. That being said, I'll turn it over now to the committee. Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. In reading through this, I think it's supposed to be a chocolate factory. But that notwithstanding, I think also the GRCA has a request for a fee. And there's also in the GSP submission, there's an additional variance for a setback. That's what I found. Someone clarify that for me.
Scott?
I was going to ask the same question, but I answered it on myself, being a former planner. I think the setback was considered to be legal non-complying because the building isn't moving, and it's not required.
Correct.
Okay. So there would be the additional condition for the GRCA fee. Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, seeing no one's jumping in, I think that this is a good application, and once we get out of this pandemic shutdown, I'm going to go there. So anyway, a parking reduction, I have no problem with that. We have the GRCA fee, so I move that this be approved as amended with the 5 conditions.
Okay, before I call for a second, Jennifer had a comment or question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to second the motion with a minor amendment. And so to pick up on your point, Mr. Chair, I think in the preamble, it should say and I'm going to suggest instead of a craftsman shop, a craftsperson shop. And the same language in condition C. With that amendment, I'm happy to second the motion.
All right, Bob, you're
Yeah,
agreeable
Mr.
to that friendly amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I consider that a friendly amendment. We need to get up with the time, so thank you, Ms. Meter, on correcting us old guys here. So yeah, again, my motion, and I think Jennifer, you seconded that?
Yeah. And that's with that amendment plus the GRCA fee that you had brought forward as well. So there's a second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next application is B 2021-44. It's 51 Nelson Ave. No one registered in opposition.
Through the chair,
Yes.
my apologies. John is not on the call at this time, but we are working to get in touch with him.
Oh, okay. All right. So then we will set that one aside. Next application then is B 2021-45. That's 35 Coral Crescent. We have 2 people registered in support, 3 registered in opposition. And we've received some correspondence. I just want to note it as well in opposition. And what we'll do, our normal course is we will hear from the people who are in opposition. We'll give them an opportunity to voice their concerns to the committee. And then we can let the applicant address those, and then we'll open it for any questions. If any members of any of the committee have any questions for anyone as they're speaking in opposition, just let me know and we'll give you an opportunity to ask them while they're making their presentation. If also someone has already said something, we don't need to have it repeated. If someone has already voiced your same concerns, you can simply let us know that that's the case and that you have all the same concerns, and it will be duly noted as well. So that being said, I guess the first person that was registered is Paula. Are you online, Paula? No? Yep, there she is. Okay, Paula.
She's muted.
Paula, you're muted. There we go.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, we'll hear what you have to say regarding your concerns on this application, please.
I reside at 54 Coral Crescent, and in reviewing the application, I felt that it was missing a lot of the required information. It's also my understanding that some of the information on the application was filled out incorrectly. I believe that the house is built over a landfill, so it might need some further environmental study in order to look at severance, destruction and rebuilding. We're also concerned about the level of intensification for a small Crescent that's adjacent to a historic neighborhood. We feel that putting 4 dwellings on a lot that currently contains 1 single family home would be in excess of the intensification that our neighborhood could sustain. We are a small crescent, and with the increased noise, parking, activity, potential drain on resources in the area, that it might be too much to handle to sever this lot and create 2 duplexes where, as I had said, one house is currently standing. We also feel that it would affect the aesthetic look of our neighborhood, given that with the size of the lot, we would guess that some variances would be required in order to accommodate parking, and how much building would have to happen on the lot to fit 2 duplexes after severance would really affect the look and aesthetics of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Paula. So basically, I think in summary, there's environmental, parking, and massing on the street, if I hear her correctly. Okay, so those 3 items that we'll ask staff to maybe just briefly address once we move to that point, Brian. The next person then would be Nancy or Dave Weaver.
Good morning.
Good morning, Nancy.
My name is Nancy Carlisle Weaver, and I'm at 38 Coral Crescent, which is basically across from number 35. And most of my concerns have been addressed by Paula. The main one being about the landfill and the environmental concerns, the look and intensification that would be required for the homes to either go up in height or back, affecting the remaining yard, and the concern about parking. And the other major one she addressed too was about the traffic and congestion on the street. Because we are a 1-block street with only 1 access point from Pleasant Avenue. Last year when the road was reconstructed and our infrastructure was replaced, the entrance to our street was actually narrowed, and we already have a heavy load of parking with neighboring people from Pleasant parking on our street. So we're concerned about the access for emergency vehicles, garbage, snow removal, and all of those items. Everything else is covered. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. All right, last one is Paula Snow.
No, already done Paula.
No, there was 2 Paulas.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry, yeah. There we go. There's Paula.
Hi.
Hi, Paula.
Thanks for letting me speak. So I'm Paula Snow, and my husband is Ron Keogh, and we live right beside 35 Coral Crescent. And our concerns have been addressed in an email, but we share a common space between us where there is literally less than 7 feet between where their carport currently sits and the side of our door. The area was re-asphalted last year. The driveways were redone. And instead of putting a fence back, we decided to be very neighborly with letting the asphalt butt up against our sidewalk, because we had sidewalks on both sides of our property. And we had garbage removed from the 100-year-old dump, and it was removed right to the front of our properties. They at 35 Coral got a brand new driveway because of the removable garbage, and part of their front lawn was also removed due to there being garbage on the front lawn. We were asked to not speak about it, and we actually signed paperwork to not put it all over social media that this garbage dump from 100 years ago was removed from our street. If you look at all the driveways on our street, the garbage was removed up to the point of the houses that have had their asphalt removed and then put back. 35 Coral Crescent had their full entire driveway removed, plus part of their front lawn. 31 Coral, which is where we live, had our whole entire front lawn removed, dug down 20 feet, the front of the driveway as well on our other side. And the city said, that's as far as we're willing to chase the garbage. And so our concerns with this house being torn down is there's beautiful mature trees in our backyard. We go all the way back as well. We do not have a fence between us. And we have a cement wall that is in the shape of an L. And that cement wall was put down in the 70s because there was a big flood and the water flow comes from 35 Coral Crescent through our joint common area and finds the least air, like the area that is the least, goes to the lowest point. And so this area where this this cement wall had to be put, was put in because one spring, they had a massive flood and 4 feet of water ended up in our basement. The foundation was cracked. We didn't live here at the time. The original owners lived here. The house was shifted. It had to be re-bricked. And the concerns that we have as homeowners are, what will it do to the value of our home? But also the whole landscape. If they're going to dig back further, remove trees, will they possibly kill our trees, the trees in the front? Will we be having a parking lot beside us? A lot of the concerns Paula said about our neighborhood, there's only 14 houses on this little crescent. The increase of parking, the fact that we lived by one neighbor, we moved here for the choices of having, single family dwellings to all of a sudden be living beside a multiple dwelling home. And what's it going to do to the quality of our lives?
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else in opposition? I think that covers everyone, correct?
Through the chair, you are correct.
Yep, okay, great. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anyone. And there was also one that was handed in a written submission that couldn't attend, that said she'll be watching it this evening, so that those concerns are duly noted as well. Maybe what we'll do is we'll hand this over to staff just to maybe address some of the concerns. I think in summary, the way that from what I can see from my notes here is there was environmental, which I know that the city, and one of the conditions in the report is a record of site condition, which will fully address the environmental as it pertains to the site. Then there was also the parking and the massing on the street and the congestion and the trees. So Brian, do you just want to maybe provide some comments back to the people that are opposed? Or Andrew, one of the two?
Yes, Mr.
I saw
Chair.
you just pop up, Andrew. Yeah. Yeah.
I have my trusty file planner here today, so he
Yeah,
can,
that's fine.
he's
Yeah.
most familiar with the file, so I would suggest
Sure.
Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I think the first item that was addressed was the environmental. And Mr. Chair, you did identify correctly that a record of site condition would be required as a condition of approval. So this condition would require the owner to undertake environmental testing. And if any contamination is found as a result of a former landfill in the area or otherwise, they would be required to clean that up prior to the severance going through. With respect to massing and parking, this area falls within the REENS study area. And so the required special setback requirements would come into play here. And the property would be, any future dwellings would have to comply with zoning. This is pretty standard in low density residential zones, maximum height of 10.5 meters. You've got 2.5 or 1.2 meter side yards on both sides, 7.5 meter rear yard. So those would have to be complied with. It's very standard in residential areas. With respect to parking, section 6 of the zoning bylaw would ensure that a certain portion of the front yard is set aside for landscaped area, and only a certain remaining portion would be allowed for driveway. So the zoning is going to look at all of those things. We do have examples of many different types of dwellings in this neighborhood. Different shaped lots, different sizes of lots. We've got recent examples. There are singles, semis, and duplexes in this neighborhood. We've checked in with our heritage staff, and they do not have any concerns. What else did we talk about? I guess just to sum it up, this, going back to environmental, if this application is approved, the site would end up being clean, whereas right now we're not 100% sure if it's clean. So that would be one benefit. Staff's of the opinion that it's compatible, reasonable, and minor intensification for this site.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Okay, questions or comments, Jennifer, then Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank Mr. Pennell for his comments. I agree. I take staff's recommendation on this, and from my review of the neighborhood, agree with the opinion put forth by Mr. Pennell. I do think 2 duplexes on this lot can be configured to be in keeping with the character of the area. Just because of some of the comments that were made, particularly in relation to this old landfill and contamination, I want to propose an amendment to condition 11, only just to clarify that this record of site condition process for the residents, to clarify that it is done by an independent qualified person. It's not done by the city or anything like that. So it's, because it sounded like there was some kind of concern about keeping it hush hush, and I don't know the details, but my proposed amendment to address any concerns in that regard is to the first sentence to say that the owner shall file a record of site condition for both the retained and severed lands by an independent qualified person.
Prepared by, yeah. Prepared by, okay. Scott?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for staff. The first one is, does staff know what the status of the site cleanup, in other words, the decommissioning and the RSC? If it has been started, or is it, what's the status? Do you have any idea?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't know the status. This is the region's bailiwick, so to speak. They didn't provide any information on the status of the site. We did hear from quite a few residents that, especially long-term residents, that there's indication that this was a former landfill. We've certainly flagged it in our official plan, but we don't know the status. There may be provincial files, but the region would have more information.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, there's a rationale for me asking that question, and I'll get to it when I make some comments on the application. Second question I have is just relating to process. And this is something I guess staff can clarify for the residents, because I've read all of their submissions. This use is obviously permitted by the current zoning, so you can confirm that with your response. But unlike the previous application that we actually just pushed through on Nelson, in that case, the dwelling was built and the severance came later. And I'm a fan of that, and I think that's the way you should always do it. In this case, I have a real problem with severing a parcel of land without knowing what's going to go on it. And I think that's the reason I'm going to have a little negativity when the time comes, and I will make some comments. But if you can just talk a little bit more about confirming that it is a permitted use, just for the residents' perspective, and also just about process and why plans were not attached to this application.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So I do confirm that duplex use is permitted. That's pretty standard in every low density residential zone. That the dwellings will have to comply with zoning. And so that's a key requirement throughout the city. When we've got intensification, it's got to meet zoning. And so we don't have a plan that shows the future dwellings. That's not something that is required to be submitted. In this case, if the applicant gets approval and decides, oh geez, I do need variances, they would have to come back to the committee. But staff is confident that these lots that are proposed can accommodate a reasonable development that does comply with the zoning. We've seen it in countless other cases. And so that would be my response to your concerns.
Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I have some serious concerns about this application. It was commented by staff that there are similar multi-staged buildings within the neighborhood. Well, there aren't any on that street. I'm concerned that because we have no elevations coming with this application, we don't even have a drawing that it shows where on the properties that they're going to be located. I think this application is does not fit in with the existing construction of the buildings on that street, maybe other places in the neighborhood, but not on that street. I think the intensification is too great. I think the scale and massing, which we're guessing at this point, is incompatible. I do note that, and I understand the record of site condition, which will clean up any of the environmental issues. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm just concerned that this is not compatible with other houses on the street. So I will not be supporting this application.
Scott?
I'm going to share the comments from my colleague, Mr. McCall. I too view this as a precedent setter specifically for this street, and I'm sure some of the residents on the street actually find it a bit surprising that this could happen. And there are other lots on the street where exactly the same thing could happen. The reason I pointed out the issue about the record of site condition, because in my experience for a property like this, it might actually take more than a year for that RSC to be approved. And if we impose this condition now, these conditions have to be fulfilled within 1 year. We're just basically creating something that will be null and void. So I'm suggesting that I'm opposed to where it is right now, but I prefer to use the word premature. I'd like to see the what's being proposed on this site before I allow severance, because I want to make sure that it's in keeping with the surrounding development. And quite frankly, I'd like to see the RSC advanced, because if you don't clean up this site, we're going to be back in front of the committee a year from now. So at this point, I'm either suggesting it be deferred, or I will be alongside Mr. McCall and I will be recommending against.
Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I definitely appreciate the comments of my fellow committee members. I generally, as a general principle, I agree that when a severance application like this comes in and in an existing established residential neighborhood, it should be accompanied by the full proposal plans for what the ultimate development is. I appreciate Mr. Pinnell's comments. There's no obligation for an applicant to provide that, but it certainly helps. It helps us. And I could argue that under the criteria under subsection 24 for severance, as Mr. Hanna said, that it's premature without knowing that. And that's one of the criteria, whether or not it's premature. Another of the criteria is the suitability of the land for the purpose for which it is to be subdivided. So again, to fully understand those criteria and satisfy those criteria, I think as the general principle, we should be encouraging applicants to provide us with a full development proposal right to the end. And not only does that address concerns and allow us to evaluate it better, it could save the process and bringing all these residents back before the committee a second time if they do end up deciding that they want to pursue variances. while they do have to comply with zoning, they always have the ability to come back for variances, and that would put these residents through a further process should it be approved. So just as a general principle, I just wanted to put that out there. I'm happy to support my fellow members on this motion, but I personally do agree with staff in this particular case, but I will be supporting my fellow members on the motion.
And we'll hear from the applicant in a minute. I don't necessarily disagree with what I'm hearing myself, but personally, I think that every site needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And some are more straightforward than others. Obviously, this one is a little bit more technical than what you would normally find, or what we might also find in some other applications coming forward to us this morning. So I wouldn't want to see us take a blanket approach, but I do appreciate the comments that are being said in this regard. And that's my opinion. Janelle, do you want to give you the opportunity to
Yes,
address the application?
sure. I would just like to address some of the comments about,
Sure.
First of all, the environmental. We are fully prepared to fulfill the record of site condition requirements set out by the region and the city. In terms of the massing and what would be built on the site, I can confirm, as Andrew had mentioned, that these are 2 houses that will be built, and we plan to put a duplex unit into the basement of those homes. We are planning to fully comply with the zoning that has been set out for this area. We will not be coming forward with any variances or anything like that. So we would just be trying to follow what the city has already set out in the zoning for this area. But I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
One of the suggestions by one of my colleagues was a deferral, and I think the deferral would afford some time to be able to provide the committee with a building envelope or construction plotting on the sites and some front elevations. Would you have an issue with that?
That is something we can provide, but if it's in accordance with the zoning, like, there's not very many different things that can be built here. Like, we are restricted on the sides by the lot size, and we are restricted on the height by the zoning. So in terms of the massing, like, it's a pretty small amount of variable that's going to happen there.
All right. Anyone else? Mike?
I just want to go on record, Mr. Chair, to support McCall in this undertaking. I don't feel it's the appropriate location or time for this sort of development. I think it, as Bob said, essentially ruin the culture of the neighborhood, if that's a proper word. It's not designed, I don't think, for multi-tenancy units, and I wouldn't be supporting the application as it's presently presented.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to my fellow board members or committee members. I'm gonna, as I stated, I'm not supporting it as it sits. I think the suggestion that this be deferred for elevation drawings and more information. So I am prepared to move that this be deferred so that we can get the information that Ms. Meter thinks we should have, that I think we should have, that the rest of the committee thinks we have. So I move that this be deferred until we have the correct updated information.
Yeah, but let's be more specific then, Bob, if that's what you want to do, is as to, that's just kind of blanketing it. So to make it fair for the applicant, maybe we should be more specific as to exactly what you're looking for. So if that would be an elevation, if that would be building plotting on the sites, that type of thing, I think that's a more fair approach in any event. So it's not kind of floating out there, right?
I agree, Mr. Chair. So that my motion is that this be deferred for a time period to allow the applicant to provide the plotting on the land and elevations of what these proposed buildings are going to look like.
All right, Scott?
Fully support the deferral, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for clarifying what we need. I'd also like to add that the applicant provide an update to the status of the record of site condition and the site decommissioning. I just filed in the last year a very similar application. It took 8 months for the ministry to approve it, and it took us 6 months to get there. So it was a 14-month process. So,
That's if you don't have any issues.
Exactly. I'd like to know what the status is so that we know we're within a year of supporting the full development. So.
Yeah, that's one thing. I'm just cautioning the applicant in that regard, and my colleague's exactly right. I've been through it myself, and that is that record of site conditions are not a quick process, and this is only a 1-year approval. So you got to kind of be careful so that you don't have to come back again. It's not necessarily that you wouldn't have support. It's a timing issue as much as anything. So without a preliminary investigation, which is something that you're going to have to do in any event if you want to proceed forward, that would probably make it a little bit easier on yourself, if nothing else. So, Scott?
And I was just going to say, I second the motion if somebody wants to, if the mover would add that additional requirement.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a friendly amendment.
Okay. I just, before I take the final call, I just want to go back to the applicant again, and just so that we kind of keep everything on the table. And we're not roaring through this, just so that you understand. I think that we're doing this for the betterment of your application. And do you have any further questions before I take the final vote or comment?
I do not have any. Actually, you know what? I do have one question about the massing on the site. Is there something that you are looking to see for these elevations? I'm just trying to understand what you're looking for in those.
It's just generally a front elevation of the building, correct, Bob? Is that what you're looking for? That's really, and how it would be compatible, or to illustrate what you're proposing to build. We're actually more so than proposing that what you want to build, and that it's compatible with the streetscape of the street and the neighborhood and that sort of thing. Sometimes people hear the word duplex and they think of multi, and it's not necessarily that. And everyone basically has a matter of right to duplex, as Andrew's pointed out, in any event within the city of Kitchener. And I think it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It helps with the housing crisis, and it helps with the affordability issue for people to get into homes as well. So it's just a ease into the process as much as anything, and help bring everyone alongside or along with it. So motion on the floor, second. All in favor?
Danny, can I ask a question? Sorry.
Yes.
You talked about the time. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right, Brian.
You mentioned the time frame. I think we should know the time frame for this as well. Like, what's a reasonable time frame to bring this back?
It's up to the applicant as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to penalize her by putting too tight of a time restriction on it, nor too long of a strict time limit, but you are going to have to do some plotting and some front end elevations, determine what you want to do. The thing that might take a little bit of the longest time in this regard, I think, is maybe just the preliminary investigation on the environmental, which is what Scott has amended and Bob's agreed to as well. So I don't
the unknown, right?
That's
now.
the unknown.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure the environmental consultants are very busy these days. So it's,
they are. Yeah, they are. I know they are. Yes,
So to what point would we need to bring the environmental data up to in order to bring it back to committee again?
Scott?
I can help, Mr. Chairman, with my little bit of knowledge on this. Obviously, your phase one has indicated or will indicate that there is a potential source of contamination. You're going to have to do a phase two, which is soil testing. I would say you probably want to defer probably for at least or up to 6 months because that soil testing will take some time. Just to see what's there.
The other way of doing it, Scott, is you can defer to the phase one. The phase one can address the timeline that will take you into the phase two.
Yeah,
through my experience. So opposed to doing a phase and waiting for a phase two, I think for the benefit of the applicant, we can do it to the phase one, or at least they'll have the benefit at that point in time to be able to determine themselves as to what they're dealing with. And generally in the phase one, it will provide an outline for the next phase two if you decide to go that route, if the applicant decides to go that route. So you know, why don't we maybe look at a deferral to end of the new year sometime with the option to let the applicant defer further, should they need to, in order to meet a reasonable timeline. Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, there's always the option of requiring the RSC as an agreement. So that would provide additional time to be able to do the study. So that's an option. There's always you can do a change of conditions if it takes longer than a year as well.
Yeah,
so those are two options that you've got before you.
Sure. Okay, and those are both reasonable then. Yeah, Joe.
I just wanted to understand what Andrew just said. Are you suggesting that those be added as conditions or that this is still revisited?
No, this still needs to be revisited because we need they're asking for. My colleagues are asking for the elevations and the lot plotting, right? So those, but what Andrew's suggested, and I've seen that and I fully agree with him, there is some other mechanisms in order to utilize those when it comes to the record of site condition and some timing, but it's still good to have an idea. Yeah, Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, seeing I'm the one who made the motion to defer this, I'm going to suggest, as Mr. Pennell has said, I think that with regards to the site condition, that an agreement be put together between the applicant and the city that phase one record of site condition be addressed and that the drawings, as we have mentioned, be supplied. So I would think within 6 months, we should be able to get all of this together and bring it back to the committee. And sooner if the applicant can work through the next few weeks to get this done. So I'm going to suggest a timeline of 6 months for the elevation drawings and an agreement regarding the record of site condition.
Subject to the availability of an adjustment by the applicant if they can do that. I think that's very reasonable. Put that in so that we're not making someone wait longer than they need to.
Agreed.
Or if they require some more time, then they have that flexibility without having to start the process all over again.
Agreed.
So I just trying to be fair for everyone here. So, so then that would be an amendment, Jennifer.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, I think the elevations, I heard that we're asking for elevations. I just want to be clear that that would include a conceptual site plan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, the site plan or building envelope plotting, that's same basic things. So, okay. All right, so all in favor then? Great, thank you.
Through the chair.
Yep.
We now have John Messina on the call.
Okay. And that is application B 2021-44. It's 51 Nelson Ave. The applicant's John, no one was in opposition. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Scott.
The only comment I would make, Mr. Chairman, again, is to reinforce this is the right way of doing it. You build the building and you come back afterwards and you sever. And I fully support the application.
All right. Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree with my colleague, Mr. Hanna, and I will second that motion.
All right, all in favor? Carried. Thanks. Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Next application is 74 Admiral Road, and it's B 2021-46. We have 3 people in support, 2 in opposition. Just organize myself here. And we will follow this along the same path, I guess. So first thing, housekeeping, I don't think there was any. Everything looked in order. And so what we'll do is we'll hear from the people in opposition first. And once again, is if something's been said, we don't need to hear the whole thing again, but you can let us know that at least that you are in agreement with what's been put forward already and any new ideas. So first person that we have, if they're online, is Dennis Paul. Dennis, are you there? You're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can. All right. Sir, we're prepared to hear why you're in opposition.
Do you know if Mr. Franson is also, he was going to be representing the neighborhood?
Okay, would you rather have him speak? He is here.
Yes, I would come back and speak if there's anything that was missed on that, but
sure, we can hear him. We can hear him first. That's fine if you'd prefer that.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Mr. Franson? All right, there we go. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, sorry, my video is not working. I just did a funny rejoin. First time for me joining a session like this, and it's very interesting for me. So thanks for letting me join and speak. Yeah, so there's a number of concerns, and I'll just start by saying that it's not just 1 or 2 residents. I think attached you have a list of some people that signed
yes,
an opposing view to the severance. And that was just the people that showed up. Since then, I've talked with other neighbors on the street, and they've brought it up and are not for the severance as well. So getting into the reasons, the first one would be traffic safety. Obviously, adding more cars. There's a park entrance right close to that place. So backing out of driveways and things would be a concern. Driveways, because I imagine there's going to be 2 in the new development. So that's my first concern. My second concern is parking. There is already often many cars on the street. We're fairly close to St. Mary's. People will park in the neighborhood to walk over there. And sometimes it's, if you're having friends over kind of thing, it can be tough to find a spot, especially on that end of the street. So that's a secondary concern, is parking. Quality of the neighborhood. Personally, for me, I didn't state, sorry, I'm 28 Admiral, which is actually just around the bend. So we can't quite see that place, but it's just I think you call it, sorry, I'm not in development. I'm a software guy. So I might get terms wrong here, but I think it's called like the cityscape or the culture.
Streetscape.
Streetscape. Yes, streetscape. Yes. Okay, that's the word. Yeah, like that the house that we're talking about is like a small bungalow, and the lot is small. And it's true that our street has a lot of different size houses. We do have some double size houses. We even have triplexes, but they kind of go, if you look at the heights of them, there's tall ones at one end, and then they go to some double houses, and then it goes to single houses. And if you stood in front of this house and looked left to right, I don't think you can see any house that's 2 levels. So one of the concerns is obviously with increasing the height. And if you built a huge house there, it would look really odd. If you built, a duplex that was very tall, it would look odd. If you were to, sever it and build 2 tall houses, or, and I'm assuming they'd have to be tall accommodate, two families living there. I think it would just be very, very, very strange to, walk down the street and see these small 1-story bungalows, one after another, and all of a sudden a double height or triple height, double duplex kind of thing. And again, I might be getting some of the terms wrong.
That's right.
I think on the other end of the street, like where there's already some triplexes and the yards are bigger, like that's a small lot. If you had a bigger yard, it might not look so so much of a contrast. So like personally, I walk around the street like on a daily basis. There's tons of people that walk their dogs. People keep their front yards very nice in our neighborhood. And it's there's the park in the middle. It's very popular for people walking. And I just really don't want to see like an eyesore. It's like, why is that there? And so I'm very concerned about heights, and the density. I'm a little concerned about the density, like with parking. When you think about garage, like a parking lot, or not parking lot, but driveways. I'm trying to imagine like 4 families. That could be 8 cars on that little front lawn. And I don't even know how that is even possible. So I definitely have concerns there. And the last one is privacy. This would be more for, I just feel extremely bad for the people on either side and right close by and talking with them. And they're like, I can't imagine a 3-story right up on the property line. It would be a huge change and kind of hard to swallow. So I think in summary, the general neighborhood doesn't mind a duplex, even a bigger duplex, but we really want to keep keep within the streetscape, in addition to the parking and safety, that kind of thing. So that's all my main concerns in terms of this issue. And the last one would be precedent. And there's lots of, maybe not lots, but there's at least 3 or 4 units that I'm aware of that are rentals and are owned by other people who may see, yeah, I can bump this up if I make a quadplex on my small lot, and we're going to be like the oddest street in all of Kitchener. So that's the precedent argument, and I think that's all the arguments that I've heard from our neighborhood. So I'm kind of representing a much bigger group here. And I'll let Dennis chime in if I missed anything, or if there's someone else on.
Okay, great. Thanks. I don't know if Dennis has anything further to add or not. I'm not sure if he's still on here or not. We also had a couple people that had registered. Oh, there's Dennis. Did you have anything further to add, Dennis?
Yes, I just wanted to specify about the mature trees, one out front, right on the streetscape on the boulevard, which is a city tree.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking on the application, it's stated 2 or semi-duplexes. So we're talking going from a single family home to a 4-plex. You can word it 2 duplexes, a duplex, or a semi, and severing and semi-duplexes is the words on the application. So in semi-duplexes means to me 4 units. So that would be 4 full families in a single family residential area. There's mature trees out the back that are minimum 70 years old. But the encompass of that, which is on city property, I believe it's right on the property line. And those aren't in the plans when those were submitted with the survey. They show everything else, but they're not showing that. If they're severing it and making 2 semi-duplexes, would that mean 2 services for sewer, 2 services for water, 2 storm? I'm just not sure how much all that is entailing. Again, there's an entrance to the park directly across the street, which is encompassed by houses. There is no other housing on this entire, when Mr. Sampson was referring to the triplexes, those are on actual Marlborough. They are not on Admiral. We have no duplexes that I'm aware of, and there is zero triplexes on Admiral at all. They are all single dwellings that are all bungalows. There is one house that 46 years ago, they added a second level to due to they had 5 children. And they went through the process 46 years ago to add a second level. That is the only house on Admiral Road that has a second level. So we are concerned about size. We don't know the plans other than it's 2 duplexes, which is 2 semi-duplexes. So we're concerned about driveway. We're concerned about the size in the neighborhood exactly. And there was a meeting that I was called to in the park regarding this, and there is over 40 people who are concerned with this. We're not saying not to, we understand about it being necessary to demolish the house and add a semi, and people are understanding of that, but when it's duplexes, that's the concern, going from a single family house, which is the entire street, to 4 units, which we don't even have that on Marlborough where the triplexes are, and they are larger units or larger lots.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
I don't know. We had some people registered in support. Did they want to speak? There was Christy and there was Celia. Are they online? Okay, Christy.
Hi there. Sorry, got a bit of an echo here. Okay, hi. So my name is Christy Allen. I'm a resident of Admiral Road, and I'm speaking today in support of this application. Mostly because I think that this is an example of a gentle density project that I think we should be supporting as a means to mitigate the housing crisis. Me and my partner recently moved here from Toronto. I'm from Kitchener myself. I grew up here, and just watching from Toronto and seeing the housing prices rise and being scared of, being locked out of a market that I really wanted to return to. I just don't envy individuals who grew up thinking they would be able to have a certain quality of life, access to homes, who now aren't able to do so because of the housing crisis. So I have heard some concerns. I understand where people are coming from. Obviously, I can appreciate the charm of our neighborhood. Recently purchasing my house here. But I think at the end of the day, we can't allow for the streetscape and aesthetics to get in the way of mitigating this housing crisis. I think that, while this isn't perhaps unprecedented for the area, we need to start opening up places that maybe haven't necessarily been opened up before, because that's how we meet the demand that is required. And I just think it's really important that, as a neighborhood, to me, the most important thing isn't aesthetics and what our block looks like. It's that we're welcoming to others, and we're people who are also advocating for other people to have the same quality of life that we want for ourselves.
Okay, great. Thanks, Christy. Celisa?
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi there.
You're
My name is Cecilia Johnston. I live over
there.
at 102 Admiral Road. We're quite a few houses down from it, but we've been here for about 4.5 years now. We have 2 young kids under 3. For us, there's definitely a lot of people within the neighborhood who are completely against it, but there's also quite a few people who are for the project in itself. I think all in all, we just want to make sure that whatever does happen with that lot, that you guys know that a bunch of us are in support of it, but we do want it to be tasteful. That's one thing that Christy had mentioned, that the streetscape and kind of the aesthetic of it seems to be something that's very large and important to a lot of people. Our neighborhood has all kinds of homes in it that all look so incredibly different, including that 2-story across from 74 Admiral that was mentioned, but as well as a house that is across from us that burnt down 2 years ago and has been rebuilt. That was something that when that happened, obviously it was completely uncalled for and a tragedy, but nobody opposed the rebuild to that the way that they're opposing the rebuild on lot 74. So just keeping in mind that, yeah, change happens and that house looks completely and totally different than all the other homes in our neighborhood. But obviously things can be rebuilt and done in a way that, yes, looks different, but is still tasteful. And also allows people to grow and become part of the neighborhood, because we do have a really great neighborhood with a lot of green space, with parks as mentioned, deep lots, big old mature trees, and access to all of the amenities just over on Highland Road. So I think all in all, like, as long as we keep the fact that it is a family neighborhood in mind, welcoming new families to it so that we can increase kind of our density and make neighborhoods like ours a bit more accessible to people who aren't in the position to buy or who aren't in the position to make a move into an older, more mature neighborhood. If we can kind of just keep all those things in mind so that people are able to move to us, but also not impose on the other buildings around. We know that it's not going to be, 3 or more stories. So I think moving forward, it's great to have change in our neighborhood. We've already seen a little bit of it over on Marlborough. There are quite a few homes that are 2 or 3 stories. And they've done it well, they've done it tastefully. And yes, it's changed, but I definitely think our neighborhood could benefit from seeing that, and a lot more diversity as well too, in terms of the type of people that a development like this could bring. And in the future, there are quite a few old people and or young people who are looking to sell or move or who may pass away. And I think that their voice needs to be heard too, where some of them would love to see, yes, younger families here or different people of ethnic backgrounds here. And I think by allowing larger homes that are more cost effective and more approachable with all different types of people would allow that kind of to come to fruition. So I think, yes, we're definitely a bit worrisome and a bit worried about it. But I think that all of those things in mind, we could really make some good positive change that I think our neighborhood needs. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. All right. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Bob?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair. In some ways, this is very similar to just a previous application we saw, except that there's people in support and there's no requirement for record of site condition. If this is going to move forward, we need to have in the conditions that if the applicant apply for a building permit. Other than that, I'm not opposed to this, but I really would like to see an elevation. I really would like to have seen where they're going to put the semi with setbacks. So again, it's a little premature. Some of the people who are in support have mentioned the concern about streetscape. I have that as well. So I'm kind of on the fence on this one, Mr. Chair. So having said that, I'll hold my peace for the moment.
Scott?
The question for the applicant, if the applicant's available. How far along on your plans are you for building?
we have like a rough floor plan and some like massing for the site, but we haven't detailed out things that on the elevation, such as the materials, the pitch of the roof, things like that. We are open to working with the city and the neighborhood to make sure that it is the type of building that will really fit into the neighborhood and be something that isn't an eyesore for anyone. We definitely want to make sure it fits into the fabric of the neighborhood and that it's a nice building that everyone can appreciate when they walk by.
Just to follow up on Mr. Chairman, I'm struggling again, similar as I did the last time. I think the process is a bit backwards here. Obviously, this is a permitted use, and I think I just want to make that comment that the residents in the area understand that. This is something the city wants to see, and I'm fully supportive of intensification. But in this case, I really want to see what's going on. The applicant would have the ability of applying for the demolition, applying for the building permit, building the building, and coming back for a severance. And in my world, as a former planner, that's the way it should happen. And if she wants to sever it now, she needs to show me what she's going to build. So I'm going to suggest that we defer this one as well.
Janelle?
I just wanted to speak a little bit about the process, and I apologize for bringing forth these applications without elevations, but it was my understanding that in speaking with the planners that this was a process that was allowed and it was able to be done this way. And I didn't realize that you would want to see the elevations, and now I do understand that I will do that in the future. However, when I was consulting on these applications, it was indicated to me that this process was okay to be done this way.
Now I realize that I've done this for 20 years now. I've chaired this committee, and we've generally received elevations, but there's been some changes in the planning department that maybe don't recognize that fact. So that's maybe where the confusion is coming from. And it just, as a committee for ourselves, it makes it a lot easier to work through this process, and especially when you're dealing with neighbors and trying to get everyone involved in it. So it's makes for a more friendly movement forward. Scott, did you have something else?
And I just wanted to add, Mr. Chairman, in fairness to everyone, there are no lots of this size on this street or in this area. I understand that there aren't really any semis in this area or any semi-duplexes in this area either. So this is like the first one. I get it. But we can't, as a committee, test against the official plan requirements for intensification and compatibility unless we see something. So we're saying, go ahead, trust us, let us have smaller lots, it'll all be fine. And I have a huge problem with that, especially if it's an area that's gone through transition. I get it, but this is the first one on this area in this street.
Yeah, just the other comment too, Scott, for your benefit, or just to, through my experience in the past, is there's certain lenders that I agree that generally you want to have your severance after you've built your semi-detached. But there's also lenders out there that when you're going through a process like this, where you're changing from a single family to a semi, and specifically if there isn't any other semis on the street, you won't get financing unless they know that you will be able to sever the thing down the road. So it's not as clear cut, that's all. If you're working in a subdivision and there's a row of town or semis or townhomes, that's different. But in situations like this, it's not as clear cut.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I'm not opposed.
I hear you. Ideally, you like to do it too, because in case the surveyor is off of foundation lines and the foundations aren't poured right. You know?
And in this case, if you look at the actual survey, there's an encroachment of a board fence and also an encroachment of a neighboring driveway. So those are also issues that tend to come up from time to time. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that comes from, but anyways, Bob.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I support everything that my colleagues have been saying on this. My suggestion, well, actually, the applicant has indicated that elevations and lot fabric drawings could be made available. So I'm going to suggest that this be deferred for 2 months to allow the applicant to come forward with something to show where on the lot the building is going to be and front elevations to see how it's going to be with the rest of the neighborhood. So I'm moving it be deferred. I do see the applicant has a comment though, so maybe I'll hold off on that motion for a minute.
Okay, sure. Janelle?
I just wanted to echo what you had said, Denny, there about the financing and things like that. It really does make it easier for us to bring the severance forward. And that is why we had consulted the city on doing it this way. So it is a bit discouraging for us as an applicant to be told something different now that we've brought it to committee. That being said, is it possible to put some sort of condition into our severance where we work within certain urban design guidelines to make sure that this elevation turns out to be something that everyone is happy with?
Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a very interesting application, given all the comments that have come forward from the residents and the process questions that have been raised. But I also note that the applicant, as Mr. Hanna pointed out, could have built the building, and then it would have been essentially a fait accompli. The residents would have what they have, and then the severance application would come forward, and it would really be a technical exercise on our part at that point. We have those all the time, where we're just drawing a line for conveyance after the as-of-right building has been constructed. So it's actually beneficial, I think, for the neighborhood that the applicant has come forward in this, taken this approach, as opposed to, you know, the bulldozer approach, I'll call it, and has offered a condition relating to elevations or building design. I don't think we have authority to impose that on an applicant, because I understand this is not something that would be subject to site plan approval. Is that right? Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Bateman?
That is correct.
So in this case, I think that would be a good compromise for the applicant to move ahead. We know that if they had taken a different approach, it would have been a technical exercise on our part. And then it will address the concerns of the residents to have, you know, good tasteful design taken into account for all. So that would be my suggestion, Mr. Chair. Put that out there for the committee's consideration.
Anyone else have any comments? I see that there's two participants that have raised their hands, and I'm reluctant to bring this in because I'm not trying to create a debate here. We heard the concerns and the support. And this is now up to the committee, the applicant, and the city at this level. So just putting that forward. Scott?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm still going to support the deferral subject to seeing some preliminary elevations. At that time, you can actually make a condition that it be consistent with what we're seeing, and that will allow the neighborhood to see it as well. And I think we could have a win-win at the end of the day. I understand the whole financial situation, but I think deferral would actually benefit everyone. So,
well, there's a big difference between just drawings and actual construction too, right? So,
yep.
Or just a front elevation, Bob.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree completely with what my colleague, Mr. Hanna, has said. So I'm going to come back to, I was going to make a motion that this be deferred for 2 months so that the applicant can provide, or 1 month if the applicant's okay with that, that we get the requested elevations and location on the lot. And I think once that's done, everything moves ahead. As Scott said, it'd be a win-win situation. So I'm going to say a deferral for 1 or 2 months, depending upon what the applicant says. So that's my motion, Mr. Chair.
Janelle?
It really does make a big difference to us whether or not we have the severance approved before we move forward with further design work, especially from a lender standpoint. And as Jennifer had brought up before, we have come forward this way and are willing to work with you on, and the city and the urban design guidelines and the neighborhood on making sure that these buildings are aesthetically pleasing for everybody. But from what I understand, like there is, if it were done the other way, like we wouldn't be subject to all these things. And the buildings would have been built before. And as Jennifer mentioned, it would just be just a process to sever them at the end. And so I do ask the council that perhaps we could look at just, again, having some sort of condition to work with this instead.
Scott?
Just a clarification, and I'd like staff to respond to this. It wouldn't be a fait accompli as far as allowing you to build whatever you want. There would still be a staff review of your drawings in keeping with the zoning bylaw and the requirements of the official plan. Is that the case, Mr. Bateman?
Mr. Hannah, sorry, could you just repeat that to me? Your volume went down on that.
Okay, I'm just saying that in the situation where you demolish and apply for a permit, there would still be a review process through city staff of ensuring compliance with the zoning bylaw and the requirements of the official plan for urban design.
That's correct. Through the chair, that's correct.
And that's what we hire staff for.
I'd be inclined to support the application with a further condition that it would be front elevations subject to the approval by staff in order to ensure that there is a continuity of streetscape. And I think that that would be a more fair process, because I believe, to be honest with you, at the end of 60 days or 30 or 90, that's where we're going to end up anyways. So that's my comment. Jennifer?
Mr. Chair, thank you for that. I'm prepared to try that motion out. Again, as some of the residents have pointed out, it's a well-known thing that we are in a housing crisis.
Yes.
So let's keep things
We're
moving.
going to see a lot more of these.
Yeah, and keep the red tape to a minimum. So I will put forward the motion as suggested by the chair.
Is there a second on that motion?
Hold on a minute, Mr. Chair. I guess maybe a point of order here. I did make a motion, and I guess it should be put to the committee as to either accept that motion or second that motion and turn it down, or accept that motion or not accept that motion. But as a point of order, Mr. Chair, there is a motion on the floor that this be deferred for 1 or 2 months so that the applicant can come forward with the requested elevations and lot fabric drawings.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just want to apologize to Member McCall.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob, about that. I'm not trying to circumvent you either. I was just in my mind moving forward.
I understand. I understand, Mr. Chair. This is
That's a
a
motion.
complicated issue.
Yeah, I know. That's a motion. There's a second. Is that Scott?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Second. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, that didn't pass. So now there's a option for another motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the application be approved subject to a condition, and I can't remember exactly how you worded it, for the preparation of elevations and conceptual site plans to address streetscape and aesthetics to the satisfaction of planning staff.
Yes. Does that sound like fair, Brian?
Through the chair, sounds fair. It's a little wordy though. Why don't we just say?
However you want to let, yeah, that's why.
That the owner submit building elevation drawings to the satisfaction of the director of planning.
Yeah.
Me wordy?
Sorry, Jennifer. I mean, we'll obviously look at the streetscape and all that stuff in our review and consider that. So
yeah,
that just helps simplify it. But I'm happy to go with the wording that you've chosen too.
No, let's keep it simple. So then that's the motion. Is there a second on that one, Mike? I think that's exactly where we're going to end up in 90 days or better in any event. I don't think it's fair to the applicant to put through that time constraint. So all in favor? That's 3-4. Opposed? 1 opposed. It's carried. Thank you. All right. Next application is B 2021-47. Okay. No one in opposition. The applicant's here in support. Any questions, comments, or a motion? Scott?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm fully supportive of this this application. This is a neighborhood that is currently in transition with a lot of similar type homes. There has been a preliminary concept plan provided with the application that allows me to see that the application is going to fit. I would only ask the committee to consider modifying condition 4 to add and brick garage after single detached dwelling, because both the garage and the dwelling will have to be demolished.
Okay, applicant doesn't have a problem with that. I saw him nodding.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, anyone else? That's a motion, second?
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Mr.
sure, Bob, yep.
I think we need to add one further condition that the applicant apply for a building permit. That's a standard thing we normally do.
Yeah, sure. We have and we haven't, depends on the planners. So.
Well.
It goes without saying anyways, Bob, but anyways, yeah. All right. Is that a second then? Or sorry, that's a friendly request for an amendment. Are you all right with that, Scott?
I don't see the necessity of it, Mr. Chairman, but I'm, if nobody else has any concerns, I'll certainly support it.
Okay, yeah, I agree. All right, so second, Bob then, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next application is B 2021-48 and B 2021-50. Just a little house cleaning here, actually. The condition 11 needs to be for the region, just in order to simplify this, that should be removed. And then we have to insert the region's conditions that they submitted to us, which there is 1, 2 of them.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, are we dealing with East Avenue?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So the region had requested 2 conditions. The second condition has a number of parts to them, but it's just some house cleaning here. So that being said, is there any questions, comments? Yes, Scott?
I just had a question for staff on those 2 conditions, because they did include the condition from the region about the approval fee, but did not.
That one wasn't correct. Read it from the region.
So they are still requesting the approval fee, are they not?
Yeah, but it's not $350, it's $350 times a multiple.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I was just wondering if there was any reason why the staff didn't include the noise clauses.
Through the chair, I think the primary reason, Mr. Hanna, was the fact that, and I don't want to throw the region under the bus here, but they were late getting their comments to us this time around.
Yeah.
They're a busy lot as well, and I think that these came in late in the process. And we were unable to include them as part of the report just because of our timing.
Yeah, like I said, I think this is just house cleaning, right, Brian?
Yes.
Does the
Yeah.
applicant have any concern with the conditions?
No, we do not. We are fine with the conditions as they are.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a little confused. The applicant has said that he's okay with the conditions as they are, but the conditions as they are do not include the noise warning.
I think he means the conditions as revised, right, Boban?
Okay.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then, Mr. Chair, I'm in support of this. I think it's good use of land.
Yeah.
And so I will move this be approved as amended.
Okay, second. Mike, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next applications B 2021-51.
What? Oh, okay.
B 2021-51.
And 52.
Yes, that's right. We might as well hear them both together. Yeah, it's just, that's the way they have my lists for me here. So they have them separated. There's a friendly face. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm
Good
fine.
morning.
thanks.
Or is it good? Yeah, it's still good morning.
Yep.
Yeah. Good
Um,
morning. Yes.
yeah,
Barely, but yes.
yeah. Let me see. I think the region had two conditions. I have a note here. Let's just double check this. Yeah, two regional conditions that need to get inserted. And otherwise, does anyone have any questions, comments? Yeah, Julianne?
I was just wondering about the condition regarding the noise study, whether or not that could be deferred to the site plan process, since the subject lands are subject to site plan approval. And just in the event that something might change through the site plan process, I wouldn't want the client to have to go through a revision to a noise study again, if that's something that the committee sees appropriate.
Okay, Scott?
I was actually going to make that similar comment. I find that the regional conditions really don't relate to the application at hand, either of them, and they should be dealt with at the time of section 41. I don't support the regional conditions at this time. I have no problem with the application.
Well, one of the conditions is a fee, is it not?
I read it, one of them was a section 59.
Yeah, I'm just looking here. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, it's not the fee. Okay. Yeah, Julianne?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have any problems with the source water protection. I believe it's just a questionnaire that has to be filled out.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of concern with the noise study having to be tied to the consent, and that it be tied rather to the site plan approval, which is subject to the section 41 agreement.
Sure. Okay. So since I'm the one that had suggested that, I guess then we'll just go with the one regional condition, the first one, and leave the second one out unless someone who actually makes a motion wants to change that. So, okay, any other questions or comments or motion? Scott?
I think this is a really great application as far as equalizing the configuration of the land holdings, and it will lead to probably future development, which the city will require section 41. So I'm prepared to move both applications subject to the conditions, including number 1 from the region.
All right, second. Jennifer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Julianne.
Good seeing you all.
Yeah, same here.
And
Take good
Brian,
seat,
it's okay to
Julianne.
give them a hard time sometimes.
We bite back.
Bye.
Next application is B 2021-53, A 2021-114, A 2021-115, 75 and 79 Louisa Street. There's a second regional condition regarding a noise warning clause. that they've asked for that should be included in this, unless someone that makes a motion wants to change that. But for right now, we'll throw it out on the floor and do that so it doesn't get overlooked. Otherwise, is there any questions or comments? There's no one in opposition. Scott?
Just would ask that we ask the applicant if they have any issue with condition 2 from the region. Obviously, a mistake was made here and we have 2 properties that were merged. There wasn't that type of noise condition on the previous titles, so I'm just wondering if he or she has any issue with that condition.
Randy? Randy, you're there you go.
Hi there.
Yeah. Good morning. Did you hear the question from my colleague?
I didn't understand the condition.
The region's asking for a noise warning clause, which is a standard condition that they put out in high traffic volume areas. And did you have an opportunity to receive the region's comments?
No, I didn't receive anything from the region.
Okay. Hang on here. Get the right one. Here we go. It's because you're close to the CN rail lines.
Okay.
So it says that prior to final approval, the owner applicant enter an agreement with City of Kitchener to include the following railway warning clause in all offers, which would be future offers of purchase and sale or lease and rental agreements or condominium declarations, that it warns against the noise from the CN rail and just makes people aware of it. That in essence is what the clause is all about. It's a standard clause that the region asks for when a property is that close to a CN rail line or a major highway.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add further, the reason I asked the question of the applicant is I suspect what has triggered this application is a pending sale on one or both of these properties. And if you're required to enter into an agreement with the city to include that warning clause, it's going to probably take a couple of months to sort out technically, because it requires an agreement with the city. And I just wanted to know if that's going to create a hardship for you.
It's going to create a hardship that the house is already sold. I was totally unaware of this merger that happened, right? Had I had a better lawyer, I might have been informed and would have gone a different route. Upon the house being sold, I wasn't even aware that these houses were joined.
Right.
So it really puts me in a predicament.
Right. I can see my colleague's point here. Scott?
Yeah, I based on what I'm hearing, Mr. Chairman, I know the region's not going to be very happy with me, but I really don't see a need for this condition. These houses have been there for years. The occupants, when they know they're within X number of meters from the railway. I think this is just red tape. Thank you.
Yeah. Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I completely support Mr. Hanna's position on this. This is very straightforward. 2 older properties merged on title. We just need to split them apart, I think. So I don't need to repeat what Scott has said. I support that.
Okay, so that was then a motion by Scott.
That was a motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, second by Bob. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, Randy.
Thanks.
Okay, next application is B 2021-54, 2021-116, and 2021-117. There he is, Boban. I have a note here that there's a region condition. If we're going to go along with this, this is just housekeeping before we get into it, so that we don't lose track of it no matter what happens, that the region head asked for a condition that would have to get imposed into this. So staff's recommending refusal for all 3 requests. I think what we'll do in this instance, because staff is recommending refusal with not much of an explanation that I could see in the report as to why, because it comes strictly from planning. I don't see where any other internal agencies had a problem with this. We'll give staff the opportunity to explain to us why this application should be refused first, and then we can let the applicant address it.
Yeah, through the chair. The primary reason, and unfortunately, Mr. Dumart isn't here today to speak to this, but is we feel that this doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood. Quite simply, I think something more appropriate would be 2 11.5+ meter lots instead of trying to squeeze in an extra lot that needs a variance. I think anytime when you are creating a lot and you're introducing a variance to make it fit, you have to question whether it's appropriate or not. And I think that at the end of the day, that's really what's is driving staff's opinion on this.
Okay, all right. And just looking at the aerial, it seems like this is a pretty consistent street, is it not?
I would say for the most part, yes. Through the chair, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Boban.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My client has purchased this property and he has visited the surrounding street and he wanted to get the feel for the neighborhood and see what he can do. And we were looking at the street right next to it or parallel to it, the Obermeyer Drive, and we noticed that there was a lot of semis and there's some duplexes there, I believe, as well. From my previous experience, I have designed a set of semis, and I believe this was on 4th Ave, where we fit 2 semis on a 47-foot lot. And it was approved by committee, and the residents there are very happy. We made it architecturally look pretty and it's functional. So that's why we thought that we could actually do the same here. And me being a BCIN designer, I do know that I can make this design functional and to meet all the criteria. But I also wanted to see exactly your criteria for refusing because I did not experience this before. So I just wanted to get the feel like on what would be the major reasons for you. But after reading the report, I do understand your concerns, but also I saw that no other departments had an issue with this other than you guys. So I was just thinking if there's anything that maybe you guys would put in your comments that we could do to make you guys happy. I don't know, design wise or massing, we will be more than willing to play along and to see if we can reach a solution that would be acceptable to everybody, including the neighbors, of course.
Just for clarification, when you say you guys, you mean the planning department, correct?
That's right, yes, sorry.
Yeah, not the committee, okay.
Yes, sorry.
That's all right, just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
Jennifer, you had your hand up?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, I just wanted to clarify, the applicant referred to an example in the neighborhood, and I just wanted to get the address again.
No, if you look at the plan view here, that's in the report, and I will check what the page of this report is.
Second page, Obermeyer Drive.
Obermeyer Drive.
Yeah.
You can see that it's composed of much smaller lots. Same what we are proposing on this one on Rutherford Drive.
Actually, Kinsey Ave looks like it has the same on it too. So does Thaler.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can just continue that, I hate to go against staff and on this, and I will be supporting or taking their recommendation. But from my review, I just want to note that I think this is actually a good candidate for a bit more intensification than maybe some of the other lots on this street. As the applicant pointed out, there are some really tight, small lots along Obermeyer It's the first lot beside a townhouse development on this street. I do think it is, if you're gonna do this on this particular street, I think that's actually the right, and it's a larger lot. So I do think this is the street for it. However, like I said, I'm going to, subject to what my fellow members of the committee say, I'll take staff's recommendation on this, but I'm wondering if the applicant is willing to consider duplexing it or putting a semi on instead, or 2 singles.
I'm sorry, could you repeat? What if we're gonna?
Would you consider revising the application to two lots, 2 units, either semi or two singles?
No, we would really like to go for a duplex and 2 semis. It's not a decision I can make right now as an applicant. I would have to discuss that with my client, the owner, but they strongly suggested, and they already looked into designs, and they know that they could work it architecturally. Like we could come up with the architectural plans, and that would be suitable for what we're proposing here. But we still need your approval. So if you guys would be considering that, I'm sure we can make it happen. But I cannot decide now that we would just drop this and consider just the 2 semis instead.
So just to be clear through you, Mr. Chair, that the applicant would prefer a deferral, to consider that over a refusal.
Correct. I would prefer that. I would prefer approval of what we propose, but if that's not the case, then yes, the deferral would be fine, I guess.
Scott?
Yeah, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but again, without seeing what we're looking at on these sites, and that's why I'm going to support a deferral again. I can't support creating a lot, and now I'm hearing for a duplex less than 9 meters wide. I think what I'm going to eventually see is a very narrow, I don't know how to describe it, with all garage and nothing else, and probably not consistent with even some of the smaller lots in the rest of the neighborhood. I fully support what staff mentioned initially, 2 11-meter plus or minus wide lots here with duplexes on either. You still get 4 units, would seem to make a lot of sense. So as it is, I would refuse unless the applicant's willing to a deferral to show us exactly what he plans to build.
I think he said he'd be in agreement with that, opposed to a refusal. So if that being the case, someone want to make a motion then in that regard? And you probably only need 30 days, I would think, right, Boban?
Yeah, 30 days would be enough.
Yeah. Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, having listened to what everyone has to say, I think a deferral is a better way to go than a refusal. And the applicant says 1 month. So my motion is to defer this for 1 month. So the applicant can consult with his client and come up with some ideas.
Okay, Scott, that's a second. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next application is, hang on here, B 2021-55, A 2021-118. And we have no one in opposition. There's a GRCA fee that has been requested that would have to get added as a further condition to this application. It's just a standard review fee. Otherwise, I think it's a fairly straightforward application. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Bob?
Mr. Chair, for the sake of moving this along, this is just pretty well straightforward. I am in support of it, so I move that this be approved as amended, including the GRCA fee.
Second. Our Mike, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right. Last application is B 2021-56, 2021-57, and 2021-119. We have The applicant's agent is registered in support. We have 7 registered and opposing the application. What we will do in this instance is we will hear from the opposition first. Once again, if someone's already said something, please, we don't need to have it repeated. If you wish, you feel comfortable by letting us know, you can let us know that you echo the same concerns, but we don't need to hear the whole thing again. And there also, just for housekeeping right now, there's 4 regional conditions that have been requested that would have to get inserted into this as well and as part of the recommendation. And that all being said, we'll hear from opposition first in the order that I have them recorded here in front of me. So Richard. Is Richard Menard there? There we go. Richard, your mic's off. Can you turn it on?
Yep, I'm working on that right now. Sorry.
Okay, sounds good. There we go.
Hi.
Okay.
My name is Richard Menard. I'm the owner of 126 Page Street, which is directly beside the proposed manufacturing plant. I've been speaking with quite a few members of the neighborhood, and we have many concerns with this. I think what I'll do is start off by just kind of addressing what variations they're asking for and what we think about those. I guess the first and the one is the request for a variation on height from 10.5 meters to 14 meters, which is described as a minor variance. However, this is a 15,000 square meter building. So 3.5 meters is actually a 25% increase in size of the building. I don't really agree with that as being a minor variance. I think that would be more of a major variance. That's kind of the first one. Second one is the stormwater easement and moving in order to allow this project to continue. I don't see any information. I received all the documents from the city. I don't see anything of any kind of environmental impact or what this moving of the stormwater management system is going to do to the neighborhood and area. So I'm kind of concerned about that. And then the last one is the application for severance of the lot, which I don't agree with based on the fact that they have absolutely no information providing on what they intend to do with the severed portion. That's first on that. There is in their drawings, the proposed lot drawings, there is a very large vacant piece marked as Part 4. They have absolutely no plans for what they plan to do there. Then that goes into the many other things about the application. The first part of the application for the Regional Municipal of Waterloo Environmental Site Screening Questionnaire, there's a discrepancy in here that I find kind of unsettling. In section 4A has waste, garbage, solids, liquid waste ever been placed on the property? Section B, if yes, when? And underground storage tanks for fuel in 2009. If you go down to section 8, it says, are there or were there any above ground or underground storage fuel tanks, chemicals on the property? If yes, please summarize. And they checked it off as no. So that kind of brings a red flag up to what kind of environmental are we looking at on this property? Because it doesn't really seem like it was really done or looked into properly. Then that brings us into the scope of the project. Very large factory abutting a very quiet residential neighborhood who's been around here for 15 years. We have 63 homes, and we're concerned about environmental impact, noise. The major one that we're concerned with is being on Bridge Street with the roundabout at Lancaster and Bridge. which is already a major concern in the city for traffic. They're looking at adding 150 parking spots for 300 employees. And I've counted on their design roughly 10 transport truck loading bays. According to the staff report, transportation says they didn't have any concerns. Well, that to me is a big issue because we already have major concerns with traffic in this area. We are used as kind of a deferral road when the city is doing construction. And even on a very good day, the traffic is extremely heavy. And I just don't see how the streets and the city infrastructure can handle another 300 employees and potentially 10 transport trucks at a time. Also under the impression that this factory will be running 3 shifts. So we're not just talking about twice a day, 150 cars potentially coming in and out of the parking lot, plus however many transport trucks. We're talking about that happening 3 or 6 times per day. So that's a very big concern. The Bridge Street can't handle this extra traffic. It just can't handle it. This very small 2-lane bridge at Lancaster roundabout cannot handle this extra traffic. It's just not possible. The other concern I have is the amount of setback from the factory and parking lot to the abutting residential. I realize that setbacks are 7.5 meters. According to their design, I really don't see that as being 7.5 meters, but again, it's not extremely clear on my printouts. I understand that 7.5 meters from structure, but with a 4-meter sound barrier wall, that sounds to me like a pretty big structure. So the setback should be theoretically 7.5 meters from that sound barrier wall to our properties, which it isn't. Let me see the next thing here. Increase in noise. What kind of increase in noise are we looking at here? We don't have any information on that. The other big concern that I had is the city's accepted an $85,000 payment in lieu of cash for parks, which with a project of this size, adding in green space seems something that should be required, not able to write a check to get out of having to put in green space. We're losing our green space and we're losing our environment faster than we can put it back. And for the city to have accepted $85,000 to not have to put a park in seemed kind of disheartening. The plan, it just doesn't seem complete enough to be even at this point to be asking for any variances, in my opinion. There's a lot of missing information, and that's that. Big concerns of the environmental issues. What kind of impact is this going to have? And yeah, I think I'm going to leave it at that. And if possible, if I have any other questions or concerns, maybe I could jump back in towards the end, because I have a lot of paperwork in front of me, and unfortunately, I only received this letter as of yesterday.
Yeah, we don't format this as open. We don't format this as an open debate, so you get your one chance, and then just so that you're aware, Richard. I'm not
okay. That's fine. Okay. Then just give me one more second just to go over the rest of my notes here, and I think I'm pretty good. The other concern again would be the aesthetics of the building. You have to understand this building at 14 meters, if it was approved at 14 meters tall, even approved at 10 meters tall, literally being in our backyards, we are going to lose 100% of our privacy, overlooking our properties. Concerns with lighting for the parking lots. Tall light posts are basically going to light up our backyards. The increased noise with the parking lot literally being in our backyards, and pollution from fumes that are going to be leaking into our backyard. The loading dock, according to their drawing, is facing the residential side. That's another huge issue for us. That, I mean, if you're loading these, we don't know if these trucks are going to be loading in the morning, at night, throughout the night, and that. The other big issue is the land being severed is listed at, they want to sever the land without giving any information whatsoever of what that land is intended to be used for after the fact. And the idea of approving severing a lot without knowing what's going to happen there doesn't seem quite right to me either. Yeah, I know there's
Okay.
six other people behind me, so I'll leave it at that, and we'll go and we'll let the other people speak then.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Ken? Okay, Ken? Do you have anything to add to this, Ken? Ken, are you there? Well, I'm not sure if Ken's still available or not. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Ken? Yep, there we go. All right. Yep.
Sorry about that. No, I just wanted to add that I concur with all the concerns that Richard had to share. I agree with all of them. I am really troubled of how close it is to our neighborhood, especially with all the property that they have available to them to just almost stuff it right. It's literally right on the fences of our neighborhood. And I do find it very troubling how for $85,000 just to eliminate green space, you know, when you're putting up a factory right beside a neighborhood, you think that would be something you would require, not easily just disregard. So those are my thoughts.
Just for clarification for everyone, the $85,000 would have been at the discretion of the city, not the applicant. Just so everyone's
well,
aware.
and that's a concern for the city too. Like that's something you would consider. I mean, I would think, you know,
they seem to do it when they don't feel there's a need for park. So I don't know. We're not the city. We're an independent committee here. So.
Well, you think about it. There's really no buffer zone between this factory and our neighborhood whatsoever, and they're butting everything right up against our fences. It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm good, thanks.
Thanks, Ken. All right, Peter.
Hello?
Yes, there you go. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to mirror Richard's concerns. My prime thing is that there's no advance notice of this factory being built. It was just by mistake that I ran into Richard yesterday, and he informed me of this this meeting. Why there was no prior notice sent out to the residents of Page Place. And I just wanted to voice my concerns on the impact this huge manufacturing plant would have on the residential area, like our property values, the noise, the lighting, the traffic. The traffic right now is a bottleneck. That roundabout on Bridge Street is impassable at certain hours of the day, even without that factory in place. And the same goes with at the other end, Sawmill Road and Bridge, where it meets. There's no light there. It's just a complete congestion. And to even factor this thing in with no extra infrastructure. But the main impact is on our properties. Like most of the residents here built a home here because it backs onto a green space. It's got the Grand River behind us. It's a very pleasant, quiet area. And I would not have for a moment have planned to build a house here if I'd have known there was a huge factory being proposed. That's I don't know what to say with that. Like, is there even any city planning goes into this where you have a residential area backing onto a major manufacturing plant? What kind of mystifies me is that, there's a shortage of residential property in Kitchener, Waterloo, and why you would elect to have a manufacturing plant on such a pristine area. Not like this is something that should be located back down towards the 401, away
Okay.
from any kind of
Yeah, we're the zoning's in place and this committee's not considering the zoning, we're considering a severance. So just to move on from that.
Okay, well, yeah, just to have that monstrosity, like just the height of the building, it will not fit in with the surrounding areas, and it's backing right onto our property. You can imagine yourself having a manufacturing plant of almost 50 feet backing right onto your house. It's
right. Okay. So the main concern then is we have to consider is height. All right.
Height to traffic, noise, lighting.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Next one was Chris, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Chris Owen. I'm at 130 Page Street. That would be the second lot in from Bridge Street. So just to give you some context. I've been aware of Golden Windows owning the land and potential development since we moved here this past April. Only this week did we actually receive anything to see what our first glance of what's being proposed. If severance is granted, it ends the discussion needed to make this design suitable for the entire community. It looks financially driven and without the consideration of the established Riverbank Estates community. This issue needs further consideration and at the very least, additional input. I myself have worked in and around manufacturing for 22 years, and I'm very aware of what kind of impact the scale of this operation will bring. I have concerns that the planning of this lot for some reason puts every noisy, disruptive, environmentally unfriendly aspect of the factory on the side that butts up directly to existing residential. The trucking bays, garage bins, 150 space parking lot, even the employee outdoor break area. If this severance puts employee parking a mere 7.5 meters from my rear fence, then maybe the applicant is not keeping enough land for his purpose. Until a better, more suitable building plan is proposed, I feel the severance should not be granted. There are plans for a 4-meter sound barrier near the shipping bays, but absolutely nothing between the parking lot that is practically touching my backyard. I am aware this land is zoned for industrial development. When we purchased, my faith lied that any development would be done in such a way that the transition would save the integrity of the housing community that was built here 13 years ago. I could not find another example of a neighborhood similar to ours to have such a large industrial establishment laid out in such a way that disruption would be such a forward issue on a daily basis. I do want to thank the committee for my chance to voice my opinion about the proposal and hope we can work together for a better solution that's fair for all parties involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, Kevin. Is Kevin there?
Through the chair, yes.
All right.
Just one moment.
Kevin, are you there?
Through the chair, we seem to be unable to move Kevin
All right.
over. We
I
have
see him on the bottom of the screen.
Yes, we've given him permission to unmute himself if he's able to do so and voice his opinion from the attendee side.
All right, maybe we'll move forward then with Carl. Or Anna, either one of them.
I believe Carl is moving over now.
There we go. All right, Carl.
Yes. I have a couple personal concerns, which I'm sure like the other neighbors also concerned. I'm at 122 Page Street.
Okay.
During shift changes, there's going to be a lot of traffic on Bridge Street, as Richard mentioned, and which means that if I want to go shopping or to the restaurant or out, I have to wait. I don't know how long that traffic will take to dissipate at each shift, plus the trucks that will be going up and down. And well, that's okay. And then also the car engines and truck engines, particularly the cars in the winter, they start their engines and they run them for a couple minutes until they warm up. And that's about either 7 or 8 o'clock when the shift changes. And my sleeping habits, that would wake me up way before I'm ready to wake up. I usually don't get up till 10. So it's going to interrupt my sleeping, And so actually, part of the reason I moved out here, big part, is because there's fresh air and there's sunshine. The factory is going to block my morning sun, and it certainly will be the pollution from the factory that will affect me opening my windows. So I'm going to have to open my windows when the factory allows me. I'm going to have to go shopping or to the restaurant when the traffic allows me. So it's the traffic is controlling my life to a degree. And so what I moved here, as I said before, was sunshine and fresh air.
Okay.
And with the factory in the way, I'm going to be getting darkness and pollution.
Increase in traffic would impact.
Oh yeah.
Emergency services.
Oh yeah. And I'm really concerned also with the personal safety and security with the fact and all that driving. And my backyard privacy will be overlooked by a factory, and I won't be able to sit there outside
Okay.
comfortably as I do before. And also the increase in traffic would, it's only a 2-lane road. The increase in traffic would also potentially disable any emergency services that may be trying to get through, because there's not much of a shoulder for like ambulances or fire trucks to go, especially at shift changes. So there's also a concern about increase in traffic. And that's about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next one is Anna. Is Anna there or no?
Through the chair, she is. We're just moving her over now.
All right.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna. Live at 110 Page Street here, and I cannot agree more with everybody, whatever was said already. On the top of everything, that parking lot will be literally in our backyard. Development that already is done so far increased height in land significantly. Land to compare to originally what it was, is much higher already. Our houses or backyards look very, very low now. We are like in big hole. On the top of this increased land, there will be 2-story humongous manufactured building. What about parking lot touching our backyards with everything, whatever was said, environmental impact, the traffic, lighting, noise from the factory, snow removal. They will push them snow against our fences, salt going to our backyards, possible flooding. Plan is not accurate in any details. How many feet cars will be from our lots? Everything what everybody says, I cannot agree more. And it's very frustrating that we have no proper information, no any details. And we're supposed to agree with building to go to 14-meter high, which land is already elevated, maybe close to 2-story building. They are still bringing more and more soil in. There are piles of soil all around the lot, which will be still distributed all over the surface. There is no proper storm water management or details that we would be certain that will be saved, or our backyards won't be flooded. We will be okay with flooding and salt and snow coming to our backyards. On the top of everything, whatever was said, that this is very inappropriate, and I don't agree with increase of height of the building will be too high already because of land increase in south since the original landscape looked like. And same thing with severe the land. Maybe manufacture could be moved to the other end of the property, not in our backyards. I am very frustrated and I have no words how to express my frustration. And I agree with everything what everybody says. And this should be dealt with before anything else is approved.
Okay, thanks, Anna. All right, I believe that's everyone then that had registered that we were able to get through to. Before I pass this over then to my colleagues to ask questions, we've heard the concerns. We're here to consider a severance and a building height increase, and that's what we're here to consider on an existing piece of industrial land that has been, I would assume, zoned industrial for a long time. Kiara, just two questions, I guess. Number one is what's the, I know it's manufacturing, but what's the proposed use specifically going to be on site, and why do they require the additional height?
Yes, the severed lands, we have a purchaser. I can't divulge.
That's fine
at this point in time, but there is a purchaser who is interested in the severed piece. And so the size of the site is appropriate for what they want to do. With respect to the height, it's really a function of this is going to be a state-of-the-art facility, fully automated. They're currently on Fergus Avenue in a very constrained site in an older building. It's been added on to for several years. This is going to be a state-of-the-art facility that requires a bit of height for all the mechanics that are going to be within the building. And so if that's driven predominantly that particular additional height. And just lastly, I should just note the new bylaw, Crosby bylaw, doesn't have a height restriction at all in the employment zones. So if we were to proceed, say in a couple months' time, it wouldn't be before you at all with respect to this height request. But if I may, Mr. Chair, I can try to help answer some of the questions that were raised.
Sure.
Because they're all very good comments and deserve some explanation, and I appreciate this isn't some of these aspects are not sort of within the realm of your committee, but I think they deserve answering for the sake of addressing the residents' concerns, because it is a big change for sure.
Yes.
As you noted, these lands are employment, have been designated and zoned as such for a number of years. And in fact, this was a former gravel pit. And that's really why there's a substantial amount of earth moving going on the site right now, just to bring it back up to its original grade. There was the height issue. I spoke to that in terms of why we need it. Having said that, we also have put the building in a location that is about almost 70 meters away from the property line. And then you see in the cross sections I provided with the application, it kind of demonstrates sort of the interface that you'll see between the properties and the building with the proposed 3.5 meter or 12-foot noise wall. There will be additional landscaping, what the residents probably have not seen and you can appreciate it through the site plan approval process, which we have approval in principle for with the city staff. There is additional landscaping, enhanced landscaping. We're proposing larger stature trees, coniferous trees to interface between us and the residential homes. So that will hopefully help alleviate some of those compatibility concerns with respect to the parking area and the building itself. Lighting, we are addressing that, and specifically to the parking area. We're reducing the height of the light standards. They're all going to be LED lights. And for those that know, LED lights don't have that same glare as sort of the traditional incandescent lights that we used to have. So they're more going to be directional. There will be shrouds on some of the lights to reduce the glare towards the residents. So that's been submitted as part of the site plan application to address the light concerns. In terms of the environmental remediation, we have done extensive amount of work on site with respect to the environment on the site. This is where there's floodplain issues, there's slope stability issues, there's actually habitat issues, wetland, etc. The list goes on. We've done retain all the necessary ecologists, established the development limit, which is the basis for the severance, along the severed line along the Grand River. So based on all the work that's been reviewed and approved by the agencies, GRCA and the city, that development limit has been established, which forms the basis of this one of the severed limits. Just in terms of the park system, and just if I may speak to that, although there is a cash contribution, our client is also through the site plan review process, allowing the city to, through a conservation easement, allowing the extension of the trail system. There's already an informal trail system effectively trespassing on our client's lands, but they will establish a trail system that extends the existing trail system along the river on their lands through an easement to allow the public to access the trail system along the river. And that'll continue and be a little more established and formalized through this conservation easement. And I guess if I can speak briefly about the shift work, just to clarify that there are going to be two shifts. There are two shifts. So the capacity, roughly 100 people, 150 per shift. The shifts start at 7:30. They switch around 2:30, 3 o'clock. The last shift will leave at 12:30 at night. They have 2 trucks and there's 10 shipments a day. And effectively they bring in on the one side, on the east side of the building, windows are manufactured and they leave on sort of the west side of the building. So that's how the site is designed and operated. I can show you some elevations that we've retained a local architect, well respected architectural firm. I think people will be quite impressed with the design of the buildings. And like I said, this is meant to retain an established employer within the community so that they can grow and expand on identified and designated lands, so that they can continue to stay within Kitchener and thrive and be a leader in their industry. So I think I'll leave it at that. I think I'll be happy to answer any other questions that the committee may have. Thanks.
Good. Thanks, Pierre. Does anyone have any questions? Bob?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair, I was having to unmute myself. Couple of questions, actually, and I think, Denny, you alluded to this, that this was zoned industrial or employment lands probably quite some time ago, and I think Mr. Chauvin also indicated that as well. And so I guess my question might be, the zoning of these lands was probably prior to when Page Street was developed. And I don't know, whenever you buy a piece of property, you should always take a look and see what's around, what it could be. The question actually to maybe Mr. Bateman regarding the cash in lieu of parkland. I just want to clarify that these cash in lieu payments don't go to city's general revenues. They go into the Parkland Trust Fund.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yeah, so the extra money that the Parkland Trust Fund gets from this development will go into other parkland projects throughout the city. So I don't have a problem with that. And my fellow committee members will know I'm a big supporter of parkland.
Sorry to interrupt, Bob, just 1 second. I just want to inform the members that Jennifer has a prior commitment that she has to leave right now. So if she's bouncing, that's why.
Okay, well, if we want to hear from Jennifer, go ahead.
I'm just gonna leave it.
She doesn't have to.
I won't say any comments then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Thanks. Okay, Bob, sorry about that.
No problem. I know how our timetables go, and we're now coming up 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with the parkland dedication. I want the existing neighbors to know that that is not just going into general revenue to pay for traffic lights. The only people that I see that are neighbors that are being affected by this are the ones on Page Street. Because to the north of this property on Bridge Street, it appears to me from the aerial shot that that also is industrial. Those are all too big to be houses. So it is in keeping with that part of Bridge Street being industrial. And so I really don't see too much of a, I know the neighbors see a problem with this. They maybe should have done their homework before moving in. I don't have a problem with this. And a variance on the building height is in my opinion, minor. And we're here just to really essentially sever off that other portion, which is to the east of the proposed development.
Right.
So I'm in support of this, Mr. Chair.
All right, Scott.
Just a couple of quickie questions for staff. I noticed that this application has approval in principle. So just to benefit the residents, in addition to what the applicant has indicated, I'm going to assume that you've looked at traffic studies for this. You've looked at a lighting plan, you've looked at noise, you've looked at landscaping. I see that there's a sound barrier. I suspect that there's extensive landscaping in that 7.5 meters between the property line and the parking, and I suspect that the lighting is directed away from the properties next door. Can you just confirm that for me?
Yes, through the chair, we have received the site plan application. They're well on their way to detailed design lighting plans. A noise study was submitted and reviewed by the region as part of the site plan application, and that's the reason for that noise wall.
Just for the benefit of the residents as well, there is a condition that requires a record of site condition on this, I believe, from the region. And that will ensure that the site is decommissioned and cleaned up to a standard. So I have no issues in that. And Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm, we did receive something from the region indicated that I think 2 of the conditions have already been, or 3 of the conditions have already been satisfied. That
Yeah,
would
we
be
have to revise those conditions.
2, 4, and 5. So I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. When we add a regional condition to a conditional approval, if we get there, it should be conditions 1, 3, 6, and 7.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Chauvin, just a quick question for you as well. Thank you for providing the plans that you did. You also mentioned you had I think a cross section that were included in your application. We didn't get that cross section, and that would have been very beneficial, unfortunately. But I think from the way I read the plans, I can kind of understand what's being proposed. But just for staff, I mean, if a cross section comes in, it would be really, really nice to see it, because I think that would have been beneficial. And yes, to add to Mr. McConnell or McCall's questions or comments, we're here to address a height issue. We're not here to address land use. We're here to address a severance, which we've seen many like this being proposed of this size. It can certainly accommodate a future employment development on the lands to be severed. I fully support the application, although the issues that were raised by the residents are certainly legitimate. And I believe it was Mr. Owen that commented that he was aware that the lands next to him were designated and going to be proposed for industrial. And I think the rest of the community in that neighborhood probably had something in their offers to purchase that indicated that as well. Those are my comments.
All right. Anyone else? Or a motion? Bob?
Yes, Mr. Chair, seeing there's no other comments, I move that this application be approved as amended with the region's conditions, and I think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, second.
Just to confirm, those were regional conditions 1, 3, 6, and 7. Mr.
Yeah,
McCall?
as amended.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I would second that.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. All right, that concludes today's agenda. Motion to adjourn. Thanks, Bob. Second.